This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to another episode of Legal for Tech, the podcast. So guys, you recognize my voice. It's always Rosie here. And as I've said many, many times, this is just a group of students and young professionals. And we're here to learn everything about technology. And yes, it's regulation. And I mean, today specifically is not about tech only. It's also about the impact that tech has on us. This is a recorded interview, a multi-interview. That's part of our project, #under 24 hours. So I will introduce my colleague here, Sophie. Hi, Sophie, how are you?
Hi, Rosie. I'm doing very well today. I'm very excited, very honoured to be part of this conversation. Can't wait to get into it.
Thank you, Soph. And I will ask you then to do the honours of the host, since you've been one of the main organisers of this event. Please invite our guests in.
Yes, thank you very much. So today, listeners, we're going to be doing a group interview with a group of family members who have lost loved ones to online harms. Those might be social media, they might be digital platforms, and all manner of things. Like I said, it's a real honour, real privilege to have them on the show today. And what we're hoping to facilitate here is a conversation where you guys can see a window into how these networks operate, what advocacy they're getting involved with, what the lobbying and lawmaking process is behind the people really fighting at the forefront for the safeguarding and protection of children online, of young adults online. And we'll get right into it because there's a lot of them that we need to be speaking to in generally and also on this call. So I'm going to start off by asking our group assembled here today, and please feel free to introduce yourselves as you speak. Obviously, this is a very sensitive topic we're talking about today, and losing someone, especially a young person, is always going to be such a truly awful experience. And having spoken to bereaved family members who've come on the show, who we've spoken to before, other advocates, that period after losing someone could be such a blur. In the wake of these tragic events that have happened to your loved ones, when did you first become aware that online platforms and other digital means might have played a role in your loved one?
I don't mind going first. I lost my son Jules at the age of 14. All of us in this group all form part of a group called the Bereaved Families for Online Safety Group. There are more of us, but these are the ones that could make it this evening. And I first thought, probably an hour after my son we stopped doing CPR on him, that I said, I want his phone looked at, what data is on his phone. And that was the first time I thought, what on earth has happened? So that was my gut feeling less than an hour after he died.
That was an immediate thought that came to you.
Yeah.
I know for you, Ellen, it's been a very long journey for actually getting that information, trying to get that peace of mind and clarity, but it was something that came to the forefront of your mind. I
said to the detective that night, I want his phone looked at, set yourself a pin, look at it, because it didn't make sense to me. And I immediately wanted his phone reviewed. So, yeah, I think that's, I don't know how. I think, Lisa, you were going to take over from there. You were quite...
Yeah, so I'm Lisa Kenevan, Isaac Kenevan's mother. We lost Isaac in March 2022. We wasn't aware that he was really looking at any challenges as such, because back then everything was very innocent, and that's why we gave him a phone. But it transpired from the information that was given back from the police that there was 3 videos of evidence that Isaac was taking out a certain act that actually concluded us losing him in March. So in a nutshell, we didn't feel that there was dangers with social media at that point, but now, boy, that is a completely different story.
Incredible. Thank you for sharing this, Lisa. And I would also ask Bruce, maybe, can you also share your experience?
Yeah, so I'm Ruth, and my daughter was Sophie, and she died in 2014, really before anybody was speaking about this, and it was before the Online Safety Act. And I knew that social media had played a massive part in this before Sophie died, because we had had enormous problems with her accessing suicidal sites that encouraged death by suicide. And we'd actually removed a lot of her equipment from her. The school had asked for her to have a tablet to do her homework on, or access to it. And when we gave that back, she just ended up straight back on the sites. But at that time, people just didn't discuss that. And the historical bit of that is, it's been 11 years now, and actually the situation has just got worse and worse. So that's why I've stayed in this group and really continue to campaign, because it's just, we knew early on and nobody was interested. And actually, you'll hear tonight from other people where they're still battling the same battles as I had 11 years ago.
Thank you, Ruth. I think so telling there as well, speaking, not only was this conversation around kind of social media and unrestricted internet access not a conversation, but EdTech, for example, that instance of the school requesting that she has, to give her back access to a device that gives her access to the internet. We speak about EdTech and the dangers of that now like it's a new issue that's only just come up on the horizon, but it's been there for such a long time. Rose and I can testify to that, having gone through the education system not too long ago ourselves, and that's just the proof there that it's been there for so long. The harms have been being caused and perpetrated, and yet where's momentum in terms of safeguarding? Thank you, Ruth. Lauren, I'll come to you next.
Hi, I'm Lauren Lefebvre, and my son Breck Bednar was groomed online through gaming apps and social media in 2014 and lured to his death by the predator. This predator I had reported to the police. I had spoken to school, teachers, other parents. I had a meeting with other parents. But the problem was, similar to what Ruth just mentioned, it was such early days of this sorts of dangers that people didn't understand that online crime is just as dangerous or more dangerous than, face-to-face crime, because it's so subtle and it's so secretive and hidden. And I think I just didn't get the help, even though I knew there were issues. And I decided to start up the Breck Foundation, a charity, because there was so much awareness that was needed and education. And then worked now into campaigning more with this group, because I feel like we're stronger together. But I just think it's so important that people understand all of our different stories, so that, within different homes, there'll be different issues and different things happening. So that's why it's so important for us to get the word out.
So beautiful to see that we can, you guys have found each other, which is incredible to see from our side, because I feel like many times newspapers cover one story at a time, and knowing that there's a network of people that really care and really want to safeguard other children is really, truly, mind-blowing, if I can say. May I call in Stuart?
Yep. Hello, my name's Stuart Stevens. I'm the father of Ollie Stevens, and our son was taken by children his own age with a knife. They'd groomed and abused him for a few weeks online, and we as parents had no idea this was going on. We'd seen a change in his behaviour, but because he was struggling with school, just been diagnosed on the spectrum. He was dealing with that as well as going through puberty. And we'd had COVID, which has had a massive impact on their mental health. We just saw him go from something beautiful to something really difficult to understand, but we never shied away from it. We always had conversations with him, but he chose to protect us from what he was seeing online. And I spent 40 years in the building industry, and I've seen the rise of brutality and horror on social media as entertainment. I've been sat in a room where people are showing videos of people being beheaded because they can access it, and it's horrific. And that worried me, with the children, having 2 young children. So we always tried to protect them from that kind of thing. We did everything we were supposed to do. We locked out the modems so they couldn't gain access to gambling, porn, or any of the other kind of stuff. But that still wasn't enough because of all the chat rooms. And the kids were able to have a conversation with Ollie in one chat room and abuse him in another. And they plotted his murder outside one chat room while he was talking to them in another. And we were first really aware of this when we went to see the sequence of events, which is created by Thames Valley Police and Ollie's murder trial. It's staggering what these kids now, they have no respect for life, none whatsoever. I mean, the girl that set all of this up ran away laughing while I was with my son while he was bleeding out. And that's the mentality that they've now have, and this is almost like social engineering from the bigger picture. It's these big tech companies have been allowed to use our children to make money, but the side effect of that is it's just completely numbed them from what they see. And can I just mention that Ruth, when she this first started and happened to her in 2014, there were no conversations around this. We're now further down the road, there are more and more people having conversations about this. I get approached by school teachers, I get approached by workmates and colleagues, I get approached by other parents. So each one of us is going into schools and going into talking to people and keeping our voices out there, and it is having an effect. So I just want Ruth to know that everything she's doing is having an effect. It is changing things, but it's too slow. Legislation's too slow, the law's too weak. I could spend all night talking about this.
I see Ruth with very ready to talk.
I would like to say, well, thanks, Stuart, because sometimes it does feel like a very long time.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
it's been going on, and I think you're right. There is momentum coming from all corners in many ways. We've got parents, schools, children themselves, young people themselves, but it's so slow to actually get the change that we want. The politicians sometimes just don't catch on to the fact, and tech moves so quickly in comparison. But yes, thank you for that encouragement, Stuart.
It goes for everybody. It's hard to do what we do, but the reason we do it is for our children and to help somebody else not go through this. But I think there are hurdles, with Jules's law, that was a real kick in the teeth not to get that passed for the under 16s, because you're never going to ban social media. What you can do is make it illegal for these companies to target under 16s and to block the content they are seeing under 16. But we just got a slap in the face. They just turned us down, and that was a golden opportunity to do something good for the next generation, and they fluffed it.
But there is still potential for more to happen. Like, seeing you here today, like, this is the proof that you're not going to stop. And I mean, yes, it went bad, and we are very sorry about that, and we were disappointed. But this was just chapter 1. Like, there's a whole book to write.
Yeah, well, you're peeling an onion, basically. You're trying to get through one layer to get to the next, I mean, I've thought about approaching the European Union because we don't seem to be getting anywhere. I mean, it took them 10 years to pass the Online Safety Act, for heaven's sake. And that was primarily for us, is about protecting children. So why has it taken so long? And it's because there are too many people making money out of it. And the saddest thing about all this is the bottom line is there are too many hands in pockets, too many people making money out of these tech companies. So they don't want to interfere. And that has never been brought home to me more than when we failed with the online, with the under 16s. It's hard to go through what we do. You're telling your story over and over again in the hope that something will change. And when they don't change it and they can't give you a reason why they haven't changed it, it's money. And I even said this to an MP the other day, said, I'm really sorry, but all I believe now is that you've all got your hands in the till somewhere and you don't want things to change because you're enjoying the money. And how do you battle that?
I want to
changing
move
the
on
people
to
they
this.
use.
Yeah. Sorry, I was because I want to get into the advocacy work you're doing. We've spoken already. We've spoken about legislation, lawmaking. We've spoken about the momentum that the movement's seen in the past few years. It feels in some aspects like we're at a tipping point. I'm imagining, if you feel free to correct me, but for me at least, it feels like in terms of awareness with parents, awareness in schools, like grassroots movements, getting phones out of schools, kind of smartphone-free childhood. A lot of parent and kind of civil society side changes are happening. The law is always playing catch up, and nowhere more so will you see that momentum just completely stalling as with the companies themselves. And I really want to know, when you lost these young people in your lives, these children, and you realise the extent that internet access and digital devices had played in that. Did you try and, when you went to go try and speak to these companies and say, I want answers about why my child is dead, or I want answers about why you didn't prevent it, I want answers about why you're not preventing harms to future children who are currently being harmed, what responses did you get from them? Were there similarities? Are there common playbooks that are said? How receptive were they to you coming forward with your own stories to them, to those companies initially?
I think from my point of view, trying to get hold of them in the first place is the hardest thing. Trying to get somebody to respond, somebody trying to acknowledge an email. There's no phone number you can speak to. You can't get hold of them. And you're crying out as a bereaved parent to go help me. And they don't care. And so I didn't get a lot of response until I got journalists involved. And suddenly it's amazing. They'll respond to a journalist within half an hour, but as a bereaved parent, they'll leave you for weeks. So they don't care.
No, and we always we have a meeting in Parliament with representative of all these companies, and it was a laugh the way that they justify. Unfortunately, there's no an easy or direct access to these companies, and when we just sit on with them, they were just talking, I don't know, of a different reality. There's no way to communicate with them.
No, exactly, Mariano. I totally agree. I think until there was media presence, then they came out with these corporate, I'm not going to say the word, but ridiculous statements that were absolutely an insult to us as parents that have lost children, when they come out saying they protect, they have 99% stoppage of horrible content. So to someone that's not been involved in, like we are, that sounds like bloody hell. Yeah, 99% is fantastic. 1% is huge that has not been stopped. Absolutely huge, because that's a domino effect. Again, it doesn't stop. It explodes through the whole generations of children from such an early age, and the damage is done. So I think I can speak for everybody that the corporate statements that come out are highly, highly disrespectful.
Do you think that they know how you feel when reading them? And if so, who are they writing them for? I see Ruth. Go, Ruth.
So I did have access to the very senior people. The head of global safety, I had an individual meeting with in the early days, and I was invited to some meetings in London. I had to sign NDAs, so it didn't come out into the media. And as soon as I started making a fuss about it, at this point, they were talking about end-to-end encryption on Messenger. This was pre-COVID. So when I started to make a fuss, it went very quiet, and suddenly I came off their Christmas card list. And it became very clear very quickly that they wanted to do nothing about it, say the right things, and then do actually nothing about the problem. And it's all very, very expensive marketing to pretend that they're doing a great job of online safety, when in fact they're really not. But I did have access to them, and it became blatantly clear that comes from the very top.
It is so telling as well. You use the word there, marketing. I do remember, I'm going to forget the exact podcast episode it was of some interviews with some people who ex employees from some of these companies, saying that so much of the privacy measures that are implemented come out of the marketing budget, because it is seen as like a kind of band-aid you put on top of the bullet wound afterwards. It's kind of not necessarily front and center of design of that privacy and safety conscious design centering there. Holly, I'm going to come to you there because I'm conscious you've got something you want to contribute.
Yeah, it's just sorry. As I said, I'm really not good with tech, so I can't find the hand button.
Yeah, me neither.
Under
Yeah,
the react
yeah,
bit. Under react
I'm
at the
useless
bottom.
with tech, honestly. Yeah, so I'm Archie's mum, and I lost. Well, I found Archie unresponsive before a 4-month legal battle for life support, but I found Archie unresponsive in April 2022. I believe 6 days before Ellen's little boy Jules, and a month after Lisa's boy. And I had absolutely no idea that Archie had social media at all. And the first I become aware that he may have been involved in a trend that was trending TikTok at the time was from a friend that said exactly what Archie had done. They had caught their 6-year-old, obviously very young 6-year-old doing, and she ran in just in the nick of time. So obviously as soon as I heard that, it sparked concern. So I contacted the police that was dealing with Archie's case and asked them to look down Archie's phone. They didn't do that, which I now was told because of the GDPR laws. However, had they have educated themselves a bit more on GDPR, they would have realised those GDPR laws don't apply to Archie because he was only 12. So that was a huge foul, unfortunately. The first thing that, obviously, when we had the inquest, they did say that through the 90-day search on the phone, they know that Archie watched 7 minutes of TikTok before his accident that day and received a message from TikTok. But yeah, trying to get that data is pretty impossible because the coins expire after 28 days.
Sorry, I thought it was 90. I know you want to come in, Lauren. Sorry.
That's the Google. No, that's the Google search. 90 days. The TikTok coins delete after 28 days.
And what are coins? Just is that what they've
their videos or anything that they've watched? They conveniently disappear after 28 days, apparently.
Sounds the same story.
But very, very convenient when you've got all these children that have died, and the evidence just disappears. It's quite shocking, really.
Lauren, please, you have your time to share the experience.
Sorry, yeah, it was more like interacting with. I was just wanting to reiterate and agree with. It's all of us have had experiences with trying to the block and reporting, and it's just impossible when to get through to anyone. But also when I've met with different directors and asked queries and questions about their time spent answering questions to Parliament and reacting to things that happen within their platform. Off the record in those meetings, when they wouldn't let me quote or record, they would say, "Oh, well, we don't even have to react. We don't even have to answer." And they were so arrogant, literally saying, "We're just being nice by, helping out." But they had no real interest in actually helping out. It was just a show. It was just to show their face, pretend, like they were listening. And I think that's just unconscionable that they can get away with that and profiting from our children. But also on the other point about reporting, with policing and trying to gather the data. Parents are so blurry. I can't believe Ellen thought to even ask for Jules' phone to be checked because you're so confused at what's just happened and shocked. So obviously that work is so important because parents won't know to ask for any of that data to be preserved. And I just feel like those companies will do anything to try to have it disappear. So I think that's really something that we all need to continue to work for, because the parent, when it happens, won't know what's happening. They won't know what to ask for, what to request.
Totally agree. I think you're still almost in shock at the inquest time. You're still trying to get your head around things. I think my head's only just coming together now, and it's been 3 years.
It's unbelievable that everyone is using the same law which from our perspective, you know, law students, we're all like, okay, this is like helping this person or helping this citizen or helping this mechanism to work. And then you kind of realize that law can be used against people. In this case, if you find the loophole, it's very easy to use it against, you know, it's a law that it's just 28 days and then the token expires. And then, of course, that expiration date, which is legal, of course, is harming a parent. And it's very powerful to see it from this perspective. I would like to hear Stuart and then afterwards Mariano and Lisa. If you can keep the order, you go for it.
Yeah, I think they're very well versed in using the law to their advantage. Most people don't know the law. You know, we don't have reason to know the law unless you get involved in something illegal. But you know, in our case, we work very closely with Thames Valley Police and their frustration at their lack of power, because the girl that created this situation and is ultimately responsible for Ollie's murder is now out. She's free. She'll be free in January, but she's out on license. We just got told that she's been given a mobile phone. And my answer to that is, well, actually, that was the tool she used to kill my son. So why is she allowed a mobile phone? Because of social pressure, because of all the pressure they're all under. She claims mental health because she can't use her phone. But you know, I'm digressing. The point is that when Thames Valley Police went to these companies to get the data that we needed to get her convicted, they were basically shown the door. Not our problem, because the servers are in the States or wherever they are, China or wherever. You know, we all know TikTok's Chinese owned, and we all know there's a malevolent undertone to it, but nobody actually comes out and says it because none of these media companies will say it. And that's where we are. We have laws in this country which you to abide and respect, but when it comes to these tech companies, they are lawless. They have such powerful lawyers, they can do whatever they please, and they are doing it. And Mariano hit it on the head. We sat behind people from these industries, and it was horrific to feel how they just didn't care. You could feel it in the room. They didn't care. The same old rhetoric, the same old lines, the same old, we're doing this, we're doing that. You know they're not, because it costs them money. It comes out of their profit.
I was in that meeting with Mariano and Stuart, and they for example, I think it was it Meta that said we might get sued for GDPR. Well, actually, I had a meeting with Baroness Jones in Parliament the other day, who has confirmed that GDPR does not cover you when you're deceased. So it doesn't even make sense. So GDPR cannot be used as an argument. But yeah, us three in that meeting, and they said we might get fined if we release the data to the parents. And the MPs in the room just went, pay the fine, give the parents the data, and they didn't want to. It would be loose change to any fine if somebody even complained about releasing deceased children's data to the parents. And they were like, just give it to them. And they absolutely didn't care at all.
Yeah, like they care every time about compliance with the GDPR and Meta, that really they couldn't make they couldn't change this trajectory because they are always so compliant with the GDPR.
They're terrified. Sorry,
yeah.
They're terrified of releasing that data because it's incriminating, and we know how litigious America is. They do not want that data released.
That's the only reason. Why would they not say, Mariano, why would they not say, here you go, bereaved parent, here's the data, hope you find something? If they've got nothing to hide, why would they not release it? We all know the answer to that.
But in theory, the data belongs to our kids, and they are minors, so it's our property. We are responsible, so we should get the access. It's very simple. I don't understand why we have such a big discussion with this.
Because unfortunately, data is not seen necessarily as a property. It's seen as a right to access or not access, which is a huge problem right now in the legal domain.
Yeah.
Because, of course, you are right. Like, the data is my child's, and because the child is a minor, the data should be mine.
Yes.
But because the data is related to a right of your child, you can't take possession of the right to have a right. which is problematic. They're using this conception of what a right is to avoid obviously doing what's right.
But that is a misuse of a conception in a
Oh yeah,
malice
but
way.
they have the
Yeah.
best lawyers, don't they?
Yeah, this goes back to what I was just saying. They know how to manipulate the law, but we can kill this overnight by reversing the control of the data. If you create something, then you should be the rightful owner of that data, not the companies providing the platforms. Because when these platforms first came out, you had to fill in the terms and conditions. That's not even there anymore. You don't have to sign anything to link up to an app. So you, as the creator, should have sole right over that data.
Yes, but if your child saw a video that was created by someone else, then that video doesn't belong to your child, but to that someone else. So they might decide not to disclose it. So that's the issue with, like, if you then bound the data to the person who created it, you do risk that they are not going to disclose.
But isn't
Like,
that, Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong, something to do with the Amendment 230?
Oh, that's Section 230 in America. The argument in America is Section 230 that it's not
The
their
free speech.
issue. It's because the data on the platform wasn't provided by them. Somebody else created it.
Yeah, but that was there to protect the directors of the companies and the CEOs. That's got nothing to do with public safety. That is there to protect the CEOs.
Although there is always the issue that although Section 230 applies, of course, on the person who created the video, like they cannot be liable for that person creating a video that's harmful. You can always see, and I think that this is what Laura Marcus Garrett is arguing, is that the way the video is pushed into specific directions is under the control of the platform.
It's the design of the platform is wrong. It's
Exactly.
The design is wrong, that it actually releases harmful material to children, and they should be responsible to control their design to make sure children are not fed harmful material.
Totally.
And so it's their responsibility to make sure their design is correct, of their apps, to stop this happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that, I think that's what we've learned, sadly, is that the product being provided from the tech company, the content that's been fed is the fault, that it is not fit for purpose until the product, which i.e. is the tech company, can provide proper, safe content. It's not fit for purpose. It shouldn't be out there. It's okay for them to come out with it. Again, their corporate statements. I mean, I've reported so many videos that completely violate what they're going for, and they come back no violation. I have loads of them, but they're breaching their own rules. So it's just farcical.
You're all focusing on saying that it is the product that's faulted, as you said. So it's the algorithm, it's the recommendation system that's faulted. Yet you're all focusing then on wanting to regulate the content, which is then creating that issue with Section 230. Perhaps something to consider is that it is the design that depends on the company, and it is the design that's harming people. Because if I'm 12 in the European Union, I should not be able to get on these platforms, and not even the United Kingdom, because if the platform says under 14s not allowed, you should not be able to get on the platform. So perhaps some point of discussion could be thinking of what can be done to ensure that the design, which these companies are responsible for, is correctly regulated, because then they are going to say, oh, Section 230 is not my fault. Ruth, please.
So
We
I
are
think
actually
you're
working with
absolutely
Ofcom
right.
on this, the age thing, but nothing seems to have been put into place as yet.
Thank you.
So I think you're right about the design. I think we should be putting this back to companies. They should be the ones that are responsible for the design of their platforms. But there are two problems with that. One, the Act is not strong enough in the UK. The Online Safety Act is not strong enough to dictate that. So the companies will do their own risk assessments and decide whether the risk is appropriate and design their platforms accordingly. And, they are grossly inadequate at times. So I think that's one issue. And secondly, you know, it's great to think of smartphone-free childhoods, but that almost puts the onus back on the child again. And we should be continually going back to these companies saying, no, this is a design feature. You should be getting rid of algorithms that push harmful material on your sites. You should be doing stronger safety risk assessments and actually enforcing that and legislating for that. And I think Ofcom are so weak in that
Yes.
we are not, and the Act is flawed, that it doesn't demand that in the legislature as well. So we have a big problem there. So we can campaign, we would do campaign on that. That is something we campaign on. But it's very difficult because the Act took 10 years to come in. And it's like, you know, where do we go in the meantime?
And it came in because it's flawed.
Yeah. Where do you guys go in the meantime? Looking back at what has been achieved with the Online Safety Act, where do you guys as a group think the next big focus for legislation should be? Should it be in what Rosie was alluding to earlier, the kind of discussion of content moderation versus design control and legislation to do with design features as opposed to actual categories of content? Is it to do with age verification and age limits and getting more concrete age verification processes in place? Does it lie elsewhere in terms of limiting screen time and access for children more generally, for example, with the use of screens in schools and the dangers of EdTech? Where do you guys see that next battle being?
I think all three of those are really relevant, Sophie. I think, you know, it's a very complex area and you can't just pick one of them. We need safely designed platforms. We need good age verification that's in the legislation. And we also need to future-proof as well. We need to be looking at the upcoming threats and horizon scanning. You know, AI is massive and this Act is out of date already. So it's very complex. It's impossible to say we're going to campaign on one thing. We need to be active in all three of those things you've just mentioned, because there is also an onus on making sure that what is put out by education is safe for children, and also that we have some boundaries for children in schools and in their personal time as well, obviously. So that's my own point of view. I'd be interested to hear what the others think.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I was just about to say the same thing. I fully agree. All of that Online Safety Act needs to be strengthened, but we talk about phones free, which is one thing. But I know from the investigation I've done into Jules's death is that he accessed it on a computer. So it's all very well saying take the phones away, but you've still got the ability to access it on a computer. So we've got to get the design. Well, we don't. The social media companies have a responsibility to change their design, that they're not sending harmful algorithms. I was just with a 10-year-old that was interviewing me for something else today. She said she was watching something today that somebody sent her a video on YouTube with injections, and she said it was really horrible. And I went, what do you mean by injections? Now that 10-year-old didn't search injections. Whatever that algorithm was sending her something about injections. And yes, okay, I assume it wasn't very dangerous. I don't know, but it gets worse. And when you're sending children harmful beheadings, violent things, knife crime, challenges online, you know, why on earth is the company allowed to send our children that sort of data? And that is the design of the company. And then it's got to be a stronger enforcement from Ofcom to look at the age restrictions, which is coming in July, apparently. But, you know, we've got to get the children that have made up dates of birth, you know, off the platform if they're not 13. And then if they are 13, they're going to prove their age. But is 13 then okay to see violent hardcore porn? No, nobody wants that. So get the design away from these children. And that has to be the social media company's responsibility. But the Online Safety Act, our government need to step up. And this whole Peter Carr's come out with reducing the time limit. What? So they might see harmful material for a few less hours a day. They're still seeing the harmful material. So, and rant over. Right, somebody else's turn.
And they have the technology. Sorry.
Go ahead, Mariana.
No, they have the technology to do the changes and the funds as well. They need to change the business model, probably.
I mean, I am 24 almost, and I don't see beheadings. So it's not just that they have the technology, it's that they already have it there. Otherwise, I would see beheadings as well. I mean, I'm as much as like I'm on Instagram very often. I'm on LinkedIn, whatever. I'm on Snapchat. Why don't I see the beheadings? So I'm like, if you do a point on technology, we should all see the same thing, right? So if they said like, really, I can't change this, it happens, I should be able to see the same thing, and probably a beheading wouldn't lead me to like severe distress. But I don't see that. I see something else.
We do see difference in male and female. The boys are shown a certain type of footage, girls are shown another, and we have evidence of that.
Yeah, I was involved in a documentary called Swiped in the UK, and the two presenters had a brand new phone each. Presenter Matt, obviously male, and Emma had a phone. They uploaded TikTok pretending there was a 13-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl. Within 30 minutes, they were subjected to content that was not ideal for a 13-year-old boy or girl. There were points of harm, body image issues. It was just awful, and so they cannot. I don't know how they're getting away with being this untouchable social media platform where they are so corrupt. But at the end of the day, it does come down to money. Now, our children, unfortunately, they are disrespectfully being just swept under the carpet, and they're moving on to the next lot because they're making so much money out of their highly addictive doom scrolling, the likes. You know, it is quite sickening, really. And then they put through these little minions putting statements out while the big bosses at the top of the tree are like pushing these little men at the front saying like, you give this statement out, make sure we look good. And
it's not working very well, is it?
It's not.
I just want to hear Lauren, who's had her hands up for a bit.
Well, I guess the thing is that there's so many different issues that we're trying to protect children, from. So when you talk about sort of a phone ban at school, that's so that they can concentrate at school, have a really engaging day, and learn. For me, that seems like common sense. I don't know why teachers would want to deal with kids and their phones at a school. But then when you're talking about the sort of the caps and the curfews, I actually do think it's a good idea because it gives them a break for their mental health and their well-being. No, it's not going to protect them from the dangerous content. And I think that's the thing that we're working against, is we're trying to keep them healthy mentally. We're trying to keep them safe. And there's so many different issues. I think the other thing is Brecht's friends were sent photos and videos of beheadings because his killer was extremely interested in beheadings, which is what he attempted on Brecht. So I think, again, it's partly education. The children should know that when someone sends you things about beheadings, they're probably not that nice of a person, but also the reporting it. But then, yes, why is the design allowing young people to be able to share these things? I want the age restrictions, and I don't understand why people aren't allowing that to happen. Again, it's common sense. It's never going to fix everything, but it's like we have so many levels of problems. And I guess back to what Sophie said, do we fix one at a time? It's just we never catch up. We're not catching up. And I think this is our future. And Lisa touched on it. These children that are being affected are our future. We need them to be safe and mentally sound and well educated, but mostly happy, healthy, and safe. And I just think it's all common sense. I don't understand why we can't get these messages through and make changes.
Absolutely. And I don't know if this maybe goes back to like how difficult it is to build momentum around this issue, but I think particularly prior to the past few years before that, I think there's been a perception that when people talk about online harms, people think about such awful, tragic stories like the ones that you guys tell, and you tell over and over again with that courage and that determination to try and get change to happen. But the thing is that these harms are a spectrum, and that even if it isn't your child who ends up being driven to suicide or is killed in a violent attack because of violent material distributed over the internet, or dies in an online challenge, your child will still be being harmed in some way through their access to the internet. This is the thing. There's a whole spectrum of harms there, and it's not this case of it always happens to someone else's kid. It will be happening to your child. And again, part of the reason why we want you guys to kind of come together and speak and have a conversation about this, to inform parents about the ways that these awful things happen to your loved ones, and the ways that they will still be happening to children right now. Like Lauren was saying, this is happening to this generation, and it will continue to happen to future generations if there isn't this legislative movement and focus on enforcement to actually change the kind of practices and architectures of these online platforms. I believe Ellen and Stuart.
Stuart's next. Yeah.
Go for it.
Sorry, I was just going to pick up on Loren's point. If I take a 6-year-old into a cinema that's showing an 18 movie, that's not okay. But it's okay for a social media company to show a 6-year-old over 18 content. That's really a sort of just emboldening the point, is that they should not be seeing this harmful stuff in the first place.
That's the problem with, like, when you are talking offline, online, no? That it's difficult to imagine this happening in a physical space, and it looks like it's less hurtful because it's a distance. You don't really get the physical feeling of something harming a person. But the problem is that these harms become from mental, from ideal to physical in some cases. And we think that this is just an exception. But as Sophie said, this is the rule. Like, the harms are physical and mental and virtual. And we think it's just, bad luck, it happened to you. It's absolutely not true, right?
If your child was stood in a playground and a stranger was talking to that person, there are a lot of parents around and teachers that would be aware of that, and that there would be action. Now, you give a child a phone, there's 100,000 people around your child and nobody knows. That's the issue we're facing.
I think Internet Matters actually done a film on which is quite alarming when you sort of look at it that way, from a different perspective, really. But they've done a film of God knows how many strange men knocking on a teenage girl's bedroom. As a parent, that's never going to happen. Of course, it's never going to happen, but that's exactly what your child's doing with a mobile phone in the bedroom. They've got access to a billion strange men.
I agree. And I was having a bit of a rant earlier about changing the Online Safety Act, which is vitally important. But I agree with everything you said, Lauren, that, get them out of banning them at school, give them a break. And I'm not saying the curfew is bad. I agree, limit the time, get them off it. So all those things are little steps, but they are, to me, little fixes.
Yeah, and they're crumbs at the moment.
And at least they're trying to do something. So let's give them a clap. Well done, they're trying something. But actually, they could come down harder and go, come on, this needs to stop. And personally, from my point of view, if you can't make it safe, close the whole damn thing for everybody. I don't care whether it's a child or an adult. Get rid of the lot. You make your platform safe, and when your design platform is safe, if that was a car on the road and the engine kept blowing up, tell you what, all the cars would come off the road. If it was a Land Rover with an engine dodgy, they would take it off, fix the problem, and then release it. So I don't care if all adults and every child loses it until it's safe. Get rid of it until it's safe, or do something properly to stop this happening. Because how many other children's lives are going to be affected either physically with self-harming, or like all of us here, with our children are no longer here? How many more have to die? And that really gets me, because there are going to be other parents all over the world right now that are in our position because of social media, and that needs to stop.
Yeah.
Great.
Well said.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said, Ellen. As you know, me and Holly go into schools and we talk to parents, and there is so many parents that actually don't want the children to have phones in schools. And equally with the teachers are being hugely disrupted by trying to deal with mental issues, sleep deprived, anxiety. And yet you get the beautiful Prime Minister saying banning mobile phones in schools is unnecessary. Now, I would love him to be put into a room of all those teachers that suffer that in day, in out, every day, not even being able to teach properly because they're trying to deal with the welfare of these children, absolutely crumbled by battling with social media impacts from morning to night. And there was a survey that one of the schools did, and really like quite staggering that most of those children were on their mobile phones after they were told not to have their mobile phones after a curfew. And then they were on their mobile phones early in the morning before they even went to school, like gaming and like, so like, please have a break, like be a child, like embrace nature, like enjoy what's going around you. But at the moment, that is their world.
This is
Wouldn't it be so much easier for all the senior leadership teams and all of the schools across the UK to have just one rule? That way they don't have to decide, they don't have to fight with the parents, because I know from being at school, some parents will go and be in their face, my child needs phone. Just make it easy for us. Again, it's common sense. Bring back, like Lisa said, childhood, but also boundaries and rites of passage. You know, we should have stages, not just here's the world on your devices. Go ahead and explore absolutely everything before you're developed enough to understand it and recognize the dangers.
And tell you what, we don't say, tell you what, some of you kids can take half a bottle of vodka into school. Just do half a bottle of vodka. Whereas others are taking a whole bottle and others are not allowed alcohol. You know, just there's no alcohol in school, funnily enough. Why don't we just do that with phones? Easy, job done.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have loved that in high school, by the way. Anyways, just saying, much better than phones. What's really made an impact on me, Lisa, what you just said about like the Prime Minister and his point of view that it's not necessary to actually ban social media or like ban kids from social media. Why do you think, if I may ask everyone, why do you think that this issue is not political enough to be discussed? Because like we hear every time it's like, is the economy stupid, or is it immigration, or is it, I don't know, Russian interferences, whatever. There's always something on politicians' minds. Why isn't this ever going to hit on people? Why isn't it bothering voters?
It is bothering voters and it's bothering parents, because we hear that a lot through parents. Holly's just said that. Lisa's just said that. Parents are bothered by this, but we are powerless because the government does not do what we ask them to do. And what we're going through at the moment in this country is just proof of that. A government was voted in and it's failing to deliver on its promises. So, but deeper than that is the stocks and shares. What you have to remember is that they've got their hands in the till. They're stocks and shares. They've got investments in these companies.
That's what I was saying. Money. It's all about money.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you on the point that it's all about money. And I think this is really important. There should be laws that limit the amount of money that specific companies can make. You know, it's not profit, it's over profit, as Laura Marcus Garrett also said on the podcast. However, I'm wondering, like, was this ever a problem that was discussed at political level? Because I've been following the elections in the United Kingdom. They took place a year ago, more or less. I never heard any politician running a campaign based on social media. I think maybe Ed Davis at a certain point in time while sliding off places, he also said it. But my point is like, why isn't it making the headlines? Why is immigration making the headlines?
And I think what Rosie's saying, why is it not a dividing line between different political parties? Why isn't it a key campaign issue or something that political parties to use against you? That exactly like Rosie's saying, unlike immigration, unlike taxation, unlike the issue of economic growth in this country and inflation.
Why did it take 10 years to
definitely
pass?
made it's definitely made the headlines. All I've really heard over the last couple of years is social media. It's definitely making the headlines, but it's just our children's safety just does not seem to be priority to this government.
We had a meeting with Peter Carl a week after they came into power, and it was a very powerful meeting, and a lot of us had a lot of belief that things were going to change. But there was one sentence that he came out with where I lost it, was that we have to protect the economy. So everything they were saying to us was a sticking plaster. their ultimate goal is the investments they think AI is going to bring, the returns they think that's going to bring. And they are all deep down, I think these companies have gotten so powerful now is that governments are scared of them because they can ruin them overnight.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's where we are.
I equally agree, Stuart. When we was in that room and Peter said, it is a very delicate thing that we don't want to upset our possible partners through AI with economical growth. And that was just like alarm bells. It's like, you are really tiptoeing. You are really, really puppets. And that's scary. And that's not just Labour, that's government, and that's all politics at the moment and forevermore, that it's all for their political gain and it's all down to monetary values. And unfortunately, our children are not the forefront of being protected. It's just so sad.
Yeah, and I had a lot of belief in Peter, and he was very genuine, and I honestly believe that he felt he came into office and he was going to be able to change things, but he has a boss to answer to, like all of us. And I believe what they want and what we're asking go against the grain, and I don't think they have the willingness to do it and take these companies on.
Yeah, they just want to keep the olive branches going, don't they? They don't want to be cut off, like, so collateral damage.
Staying on the fence.
Well, we tried to be apolitical in all of this because you can't attach yourself to one party. I mean, I noticed pre-election they were all over us. Once they were elected, it's very difficult now to get a meeting or get someone to answer your email or get a reply. I mean, I've had 2 replies to emails in a year, and they were chomping at the bit. But this is opposition for you. This is always going to be that way. So we tried to stay out of the political side of it because I want whoever can do the job and whoever can finish what we're asking. And I don't care who it is politically. I just want them to fix it.
Yeah.
So you're saying, Stuart, there, just to clarify, so you're saying it tends to be whoever's in opposition are the ones who are kind of reaching out to you, or it's always pre-election, because they're always the ones who can use it.
Yeah, because I tried to get a meeting with Rishi. I tried to get a meeting with Priti Patel because of the experiences she's had. I tried to get a meeting with Suella Braverman because of the meetings, because of the abuse that she'd suffered. So they've all had first-hand experience of this, which again makes me angry as to why they're not doing more. And there was a moment in the House where both sides did come together and they worked a solution, and then the Online Safety Act was pushed forward. But for them, that's it. That's done now. But we need another act because the act we've got doesn't cover all the bases. And Ian will tell you more about this because he knows a lot more than I do on this, is that it needs bolstering. The Online Safety Act was a foundation. It has been misused already, but I was prepared for that. But it's not right that it's being misused, because it's being misused to shut down freedom of speech. Well, everybody has the right to say what they think, but if what you say goes against the law, then there is a comeuppance for that. And but I think that's being eroded now. It's because there is so much free speech, and what some people class as free speech is not free speech. It's very bad. But it's, again, like we said right at the start, it all comes down to the interpretation of the law or what people think the law is.
I really want to end this conversation that we've had. There's been so many insights, again, things that just Rosie and I and other families out there just won't ever have had an insight into. I want to end it on maybe a positive insight you guys can give. You're obviously all part of this incredible network of bereaved family members working for online safety. What have you found through this network and through this community, these connections that you've made with each other? And how does it give you hope for where legislation and political mobilisation can go in the future for protecting children?
I love something Lisa said, actually, when we were in New York recently. Lisa, you said we're like a tree and we have all these different branches, and we all go off to, Stuart, you're campaigning about knife crime, and Lauren grooming, and Holly and Lisa's schools or whatever, and I'm campaigning about access of data, and then we all come back together and we're stronger together. And I'm very grateful for the connections we all have. We all support each other, and we all come across very strong and passionate. We all still have our weak moments. We all have our down days. We all have our crying that you can't stop crying out at something. We all are still broken, but together we're driving forward and shouting about it to make a noise for anybody that will listen to us to come on, government, change it. Come on, social media platforms, change it. And I think we are being heard. And, this is just a small proportion of us online. There's lots more of us behind the scenes, and we do all come together and shout for the common goal. Let's protect people online.
Yeah. I feel that everyone's got a little bit of knowledge. Now, some of the guys may have a little bit more insight at political sides. Some may have more impacting about law sides. We sort of bounce off each other, and if there's something we're not too sure of, or if we heard something before someone else, we all come together, and definitely like our voices all together. Obviously, we're shouting through the rooftops, and like we won't stop. We've got it's again another saying, we're part of a club that no one wants to be part of, but we're all in it, and we'll give it our all. And the support, we're all in different directions in the country, but like when we get together, it's very, very powerful. And I'm very grateful in a weird way that I'm a part of this.
We are very grateful for you to, have come on this podcast and share this, a tiny bit of this with us. And I have to say, I know how you say this is not a club where people would want to be part of, but you guys are very cool. So, I have to say it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. And yes, it's the situation that brought you together is something nobody would, want to go through. But being together has been a great pleasure for me and Sophie here today. So thank you so much for giving us your time, your attention, your stories, and a part of your soul, really. It really got here. I'm trying not to cry right now because I'm very sentimental. But
we're appreciative to all of you with younger voices because you've lived it. So thank you so much for helping,
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Without
so much,
people like
everyone.
you telling our story, we're just trying to shout. So we're very grateful for you to tell our story and to help us campaign for something safer. And it's very brave of you, I think, because the world you live in is very different to the world we grew up in. And I think social media has a larger impact on your lives than it does our lives. Even though we've had the very worst of it, I think your day-to-day life is very much more affected by what people are saying to you. So hats off to you for raising the subject, because it's your generation, it's the younger generation, it's my daughter that needs to shout and scream about this to instigate change.
She'd be welcome in Legal for Tech anyways if she ever felt like shouting with us.
Shy. But thank you.
Yeah, we have a bigger group. We don't all do podcasts. That's just me and Sophie. Well, I will thank everyone, and really, this has been a great pleasure. And don't forget, we're always here to listen to your voices and to amplify them as much as we can, because #under 24 hours to us matters much more than we ever thought. This is our life. This is your story, and we're all here to tell it together. So thank you so much for joining us today. And this was all from Legal for Tech.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.